You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. Alongside Matt Adams and Mike Chappell, I'm Dave Griffiths. We are here on Fox 59 now, the fearless new app here at our station, and delivering content to you via video on YouTube. And always we will stay tuned with all the old channels as well if you continue to subscribe to this podcast on Apple iTunes, on Google Play, whatever it might be. You know, we'll stay there too. Don't worry. We're not leaving you behind, but we are pressing forward firmly into the future, just like your Indianapolis Colts here as the combine is over.
Nice segue.
Thank you.
Good job.
And free agency is coming up. Mike, I know that you're shedding a tear because the combine is gone, because it is just your favorite time of the year.
I tell you, I've been there for the growth from '87 to getting Peyton Manning up against the Louisiana State bar. There's 20 of us to now. It's 1,600 credentialed media, so it's amazing what they've done. But I used to go 4 or 5 days, 6 hours a day, and it wore me out. So now it's 3 or 4 times a week and
bits and pieces,
and you pick your spots.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to talk to Tyler Warren. We need to talk to Colston Loveland and a few other guys. Kenneth Grant, the kid from Michigan and Maryville.
Yeah, Maryville. Yeah.
Right. So, but you pick your spots. But it's a cool time because the neatest time is that the way they've grown is that most of the GMs and general managers are here, and that's when, by and large, the media who cover that team get a chance to really talk to their guy for 15, 20 minutes. And we had a chance, as you guys talked last week, about Ballard and Steichen. They don't move the needle a lot, but anytime you have access to your GM and head coach is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And you were the one who was there, Chap, last week at that combine availability for both for Chris Ballard and for Shane Steichen. Since you weren't here, you didn't get a chance to join us. Any post-game thoughts from you about that? It seemed like it was a lot of the stuff that was hashed after the season that was just being rehashed. Perhaps just a little bit more clarity from Ballard specifically about what he means by competition at quarterback for Anthony Richardson.
Rehashed, but he amplified it because he told us in January that they needed competition at quarterback. Remember, he said he's not proven he can stay healthy for 17 games because he hasn't. This time he was more expansive on it, where he said it's got to be competition, real competition, the right guy, and a guy that can bring the production. So to me, that eliminates drafting a guy in the 3rd or 4th round with the idea that he's the competition. Now, I'm not against drafting a guy in the 3rd or 4th round as a developmental guy for 3 or 4 years or whatever.
The next Sam Ellinger.
Right. Because I just don't think Sam's back. But to think that a 3rd or 4th round draft pick in a somewhat weak quarterback class is going to push your quarterback, then you're not having open competition. Well, it's open, but it's not serious.
Competition.
So that's why
both words.
I thought all that he said, it points again to a veteran quarterback, and we can bandy that about what that is. We still don't know what that means. We don't know who the field is. What Gardner Minshew is going to be released.
Yes.
Been there. Don't you think we?
But don't you want to go down that road again?
No. I think we saw the absolute best of Gardner Minshew. We did. And he should thank the Colts for $15 million guaranteed.
And that's quite a bit guaranteed for
someone with a man
who lives out of a van down by the river.
I don't mean to pile on him, but he exceeded all expectations when he was here 2 years ago, and it was almost enough. And if they complete a pass, maybe it's enough. But no, there's not a lot of good options out there, which we can go over. There's got to be a better one than Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, we've got to continue this conversation on quarterback until it is solved. And that could be as soon as next week. Heck, it could be as soon as, 10 minutes from now if the Colts sign Gardner, if the Colts sign anybody. But anyway, Minshew has become an option that we can talk about this week because of the report. I saw it first from Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network that the Raiders are letting Gardner Minshew go, that they are going elsewhere in their search for their quarterback of the future. So If he's not good enough for the Raiders, I don't think he's good enough for the Colts to be the long-term quarterback. There were some high moments with Gardner Minshew, like beating the Ravens on the road, which I was at for the record. It's not just my presence that makes the Colts lose on the road. There are other amplifying factors as well. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Chap, that Minshew, that Shane Steichen got everything out of Minshew that he possibly could.
And to think you can get more or again would be wrong.
That's who he is as a quarterback, and I don't mean to disparage him by saying that. It's not a guy that you want to build your franchise around, Matt. I think Colts fans can be fans of Gardner Minshew for the year that he gave this franchise and still realize that if you want legitimate competition for your, I can't say rookie quarterback anymore, your third year now, your young quarterback, to really significantly push him, Minshew's probably not the option that they would turn toward.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. I mean, Minshew mania back in Indianapolis? No, I don't think so. Gardner gave it his all. He had a really good season here in Indianapolis. I think Mike kind of hit it on the head there, or hit the nail on the head. You know, he showed us what he's got. And what he's got is,
he showed you who he is.
You know,
he showed you who he is.
Right. And that is the quarterback of a 9-8 team that just couldn't quite get its way into the playoffs because just not quite good enough.
And he didn't play all that well last year in Vegas.
No, he did not.
No, he didn't.
I mean, 66%, I think it is, but it was like 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, or around there. So you want, but more than that, you need more than that.
There was in Vegas. There was some back and forth between who they want as a quarterback, him or Aiden O'Connell. Purdue great Aiden O'Connell from 7th, 8th string quarterback as a freshman walk-on to being a really good quarterback for them down the stretch of his career in West Lafayette. But nevertheless, Gardner Minshew perhaps not an option. But other options out there until the Colts make a decision. Like I said, we're going to touch on this every week, which could be 30 minutes from now. Could be next week.
Wouldn't you think that we would know next week if there's a guy that you like?
Yes.
Doggone it.
Yes.
Go and get him.
Yes. So, but I also want to leave the possibility open that these quarterbacks don't want to sign immediately, that they want to see what's out there, and see if, especially someone that you would expect to be competing for a starting role, somebody gets the best option for himself available, and that takes more time.
But these guys are looking in, these quarterbacks and agents, they've done their homework.
I agree.
They know. Okay, let's say the Colts have got a picking order of whatever it is. We can put the top 3 names in. Well, so do these quarterbacks. They sit here now and they, Daniel Jones, he knows what in his mind are the best landing spots, the best opportunities. Sam Darnold, all these guys know. So then at some point when you can have the contact next Monday or whatever it is at noon or 4 o'clock or whatever it is, that's when I think the calls are made. And if the Colts have Daniel Jones high on their radar and Daniel Jones says, Indy wouldn't be too bad. And then if the money's right,
of course,
this is going to be money driven.
Always.
It just
always is.
So I would like to think, as important as this decision is, more important than Tyler Warren in the draft, more important than getting a corner, than a safety, get a guy into push Richardson. With it being that important, if you can gauge the interest of X quarterback, whoever it is, then doggone it, sign him and move forward to the next thing on your checklist.
And if it is indeed Daniel Jones, he was, of course, let go from the Giants last year.
I'm sort of on that train now.
You are on the Daniel Jones train?
Yeah.
That's what I was listening to Rich Eisen doing his radio work, and he was saying that was one of the 5 things he took away from the combine. There were several different, one of them was like the Cleveland Browns are really serious about not wanting to trade Myles Garrett right now. But then all of a sudden, Myles Garrett is reportedly, or is that I've seen, like, somebody told me today that like the Lions were trying to trade for Myles Garrett, and then I went to ESPN.com. I didn't see anything, so I think it might just be a rumor as of right now.
Social media tends to do that,
right? Exactly. So anyway. Put that aside. One of his 5 things he took away from the combine was the Colts were kind of circling on Daniel Jones as, as their guy to come in and push Anthony Richardson. And if you bring him in, he just spent some time in Minnesota last year. At the end of the year, didn't play there. He was on practice squad there.
Right.
Um, and now, if indeed he is the choice, he's a guy who has started for multiple years. He's a guy who has earned a second contract. He's a guy who has led a team to the playoffs. And at his best, that's at his best that we've seen.
Right.
At his worst, it was really, really bad.
Pretty bad.
Right.
Yeah.
With the Giants. And
so how do you balance
exactly? How do you evaluate it?
How much was it him, and how much of it was it just
a dreadful offensive line, poor drafting, not a good organization, an organization failing a player, just like happens in the NFL.
So you look at Sam Darnold and you think, sometimes when you get in the right spot,
right,
you're a different quarterback. And I'm not saying Indy is where the Vikings are as far as the supporting cast, but they're a heck of a lot further along than the Giants.
No doubt.
Were.
And Darnold's a perfect example of that.
Right.
Like the perfect pinnacle example of you get out of a terrible place, get into even just a competent place.
Right.
And which I think Minnesota can say they are. That's the floor of that. Like they're a competent franchise. Heck, they lost 4 games last year, so you could make a good argument that they're better than that. But I'm just being conservative, saying that's the floor of where they are as a franchise. Darnold gets out of a terrible place, goes to a competent place, and shows that he has some skills to play quarterback in the NFL. So
he was in the MVP talk for a while.
He was very much so. So yeah. So the Colts can evaluate it that way. Think that Daniel Jones was in a bad place before, and maybe we're a competent franchise. If you look through the string of quarterbacks that have come through here since 2018, and then maybe you could make an argument for the other way. Just saying that argument is out there to be made, but nevertheless, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold options, and the report out of Pittsburgh this week is that I saw this from Ian Rappaport that the Steelers have Justin Fields higher on their priority list to bring back than Russell Wilson, which would
makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes tons of sense to me too. Yeah,
and I agree. So if indeed the Steelers only go with one, because I think both of these guys want to be starters and want to like kind of be or at least compete for a starting job somewhere. Russell Wilson, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I thought that he was a really intriguing guy for the Colts. He would come in and really be more of a starting caliber quarterback, more so than just a pushing to see what your third-year guy can do. To me, if something like that happens, if they have significant interest in Russell Wilson, then I think that that's a way that you could see the tone from the front office changing in the sense that we're bringing in Russell to be really the guy and to play a role in developing Anthony Richardson. And it goes, I think if this happens, it would be more along the lines of that, less along the lines of a true competition. I think Russell
that
would be
tell you what they really feel about Anthony Richardson.
I agree. Yep. They say that they would think in that case that he needs to further progress to be a real franchise quarterback in the NFL. I'm not saying that this is going to happen, obviously, because that would take a lot from the franchise to invest in Russell Wilson coming off the year that he had in Pittsburgh. So, but both of these guys, Wilson and Fields, are guys that can command starting respect in the NFL, if either of them would be a Colts option.
We were talking before we went on air, and Stephen Holder, our friend from ESPN, he posted a story about the unintended consequences that might happen of this open competition.
Yeah,
we talked to Shane Steichen, and he said, that one of the things that Richardson needs are reps. Well, we've heard this since he got here. And if you bring in open competition, if it's legitimately open competition, it's roughly 50-50 workload in off-season and OTAs and training camp and preseason games. So you're not giving your young quarterback the reps that he needs. But, man, going into your third year, I just can't be concerned that Anthony Richardson isn't getting 80% of the reps. I can't. You've got to be – and the fact that we're having this discussion at all, I think for the first time really shows the team has a concern with what they have.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do this if, he's had 2 rough years, injuries, whatever. But this is the year. And again, I still believe that they sink or swim with Anthony Richardson. I really do. If it doesn't work, the owner's going to reluctantly blow it up next year. He almost has to.
There's no other option if it doesn't work.
Sure
There's just
seems
not.
like that. Yeah.
And you should be sitting here now knowing what you have in a guy going into his third year. You don't. We've talked about why. There are legitimate reasons. The injuries, it's legitimate. But doggone, you can't continue to let your team grow older while you're trying to decide what you've got.
I can tell you one team that knows what they got. Philadelphia Eagles know what they have.
You waited. How long are we into this? Like 10 minutes, 15
This
minutes?
is now an
Bring up
Eagles
the Eagles.
podcast.
It might be for the next 15 minutes or so, but they know what they have in Saquon Barkley, signing a 2-year extension worth $41.2 million.
I thought running backs, the market was always gone.
It was dead.
2
It
years
was
ago.
gone.
Dead.
Especially running backs approaching 30. I mean, you might as well just bring out the gurney for them. Not Saquon after leading the Philadelphia Eagles to the Super Bowl last year. $36 million guaranteed, which is, as you
Wow.
like to say, Chap, the
That's
one number that matters.
so it's only number that matters. Good for him.
Yeah. Makes him the highest paid running back in NFL history.
Isn't there a pretty good gap between him and who was next? Can't think of who was. JT is like fourth. I don't know if Derrick Henry. No,
Is it
CMC?
Was it CM? Yeah, it was say McCaffrey maybe,
maybe
or
maybe.
like I know Kamara was up there.
Right. That's
But
amazing.
I think
good,
I'm pretty
good
sure
for him.
Yeah,
And does this show a shift in the market and all this? Well, yeah. If you're Saquon Barkley,
exactly.
it's
There's not many Saquon
It's
Barkleys.
a selective market when you get that kind of money.
Yes, but it does signify indeed that there has been at least a shift for NFL teams throughout the last year, as we saw and we talked about throughout the year on the podcast, that passing numbers across the league were down, rushing numbers across the league were up, and having that running back to solidify your
Right.
running game was a very much a staple among many of the teams, most of the teams that made postseason runs, and Saquon Barkley was chief among them.
And that was a cornerstone of what the Colts want to do.
It was like that.
With
What
Taylor.
they did. It's funny to me because it's funny to me. It seems how badly Chris Ballard wants to be Howie Roseman in Philadelphia, like building in the trenches with elite offensive and defensive lines and just running the ball, boom, boom, over and over again. And
with the back and with your quarterback.
And the great, hilarious thing is that they could have had Jalen Hurts. They had 2 picks above him in the second round, given they got 2 pretty good players, Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman Jr. But that was a year that, indeed, the Colts kind of needed a quarterback, and Phillip Rivers was going to be their starter. And sure, they needed weapons around Rivers too. And so it's hard to say that those were bad picks by any stretch of the imagination. It's impossible to say they were bad picks.
What you wonder is, did they like Jalen Hurts?
Exactly. I'm curious what they really thought.
The dominoes fall in order.
Mm-hmm.
You had Rivers sign first.
Right.
So did that all automatically remove the quarterback from
draft? No,
from the draft? Because I think they drafted Rivers with the idea that we're going to get 2 years out of it.
They did.
They really did.
Well, you could have drafted Hurts with the idea that you're going to set him for 2 years behind a future Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yep.
And at that point, nobody was wanting to start Hurts out of the gate.
Right.
And the Eagles didn't start Hurts out of the gate. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into the weeds with that, but just comparing Jonathan Taylor to the Saquon Barkley deal. Taylor signed a 3-year, $42 million extension, so basically a whole extra year and about the same amount of money. So just for comparison's sake. And $26 million of that was guaranteed from the Colts, the extension that he signed.
That was a great contract because that came when
the
market was gone.
It was depressed.
It was at the perfect time.
Yep.
It was at a perfect time. And I know, like, JT was kind of on his on one. We'll just put it there about the running back market throughout the offseason.
Remember they had that meeting, the Zoom meeting with all the running backs.
All the running backs.
He was very outspoken about that.
Very much so. So the Colts can be grateful they got him done when they did. And
at a good price for both.
Exactly. Very much so. A good price for Taylor at the time. And who knows what the trend's going to be next year. If it continues to swing in the running back's favor, then Jonathan's going to have a good payday in his future again.
If he stays healthy and he's still productive, he'll be at a good age.
And he doesn't drop the ball on the 1-yard line.
Boy, it's amazing.
All those things. Then
one play, that's going to stick with him, just like the tap out is going to stick with the quarterback.
It sticks with you until you do something so much better.
Right.
Then you have to ignore it.
Because he had one of the top 3 or 4 rushing seasons in the league last year.
Mm-hmm.
Averaged roughly 102 or 3 yards a game, 4.8 or whatever in the touchdowns. But it wasn't enough. In part because of him. because of the drop.
Yep.
Things change dramatically if he scores and then they win. But again, I always circle back to he had the all-time Colts rushing season with 1,800 yards and 20-some touchdowns, and they didn't make the playoffs, which is really hard. It's just really hard to do because it comes back to having better quarterback play.
I do have some breaking news on my phone right now as we are at this podcast from ESPN. Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade.
After Tyler Lockett was released.
Exactly. I love Tyler Lockett, by the way. Whenever I played fantasy,
he was a free agent
a couple years ago, and we talked about him.
I thought, wow, he'd be a great addition.
I think you talk about underrated receivers of the past decade, and I think Keenan Allen is number one, and Tyler Lockett is number two.
I remember talking with Reggie Wayne about, I don't know what it came out. It was about Michael Pittman, how, you want more because you see Justin Jefferson and you see Chase. You want more. Pitt's pretty good.
Yes.
And I'm sure he compared Pitt to Keenan Allen. That's not bad.
No, it's not.
That's pretty. You want more? Of course you want more.
Yes.
But he's pretty good. And the problem with Lockett is he's 32 or 33.
Right.
Coming off two of his least productive years.
Right.
Big part of it because of Metcalf emerging.
Right.
So this is there's going to be several good older receivers available. Devontae Adams.
Who'll probably go wherever Aaron Rodgers goes. Probably.
Or he goes to Vegas where Pete Carroll is.
That's true. That's a good point.
And that's where I could see Tyler Lockett going. And I don't know if Devontae Adams, he has no ties to Vegas other than playing there for a few years.
For a minute.
So, but are those the kind of guys the fan base would like to see the Colts go after? I don't know. I think there's more pressing needs for your cap space than a guy that you're going to sign that will probably be your
let's say if you sign DK
third or fourth.
Yeah, if you sign DK Metcalf.
Oh, he's your one.
Exactly.
Holy smokes.
And with a bullet. And you'd have to sign him to an extension. It would be like the DeForest Buckner deal. Yeah.
But what would Tyler Lockett be here? 3, 4? I don't know. And then you're stunning the growth of A.D. Mitchell by taking snaps away.
Right.
So it's difficult. And whenever these names come up, all the Colt bloggers on social media, some really good ones and some that you just say, really? They kind of put that guy's picture and either a smiley face or whatever.
Or a frowny face.
So I don't know that I wouldn't be opposed to bring him in, but it's got to be the right price. And
of course.
You're really, with a receiver, you're really going to stunt the growth. Not so much of your top three guys, but of Mitchell, which I think Mitchell has a chance to be pretty doggone good.
Right. And you just kind of feel like the Colts roster, as it's currently constructed, for the first time in a while, like it's not that the receiver room can't get better; it can always get better. But like, it's not the primary concern.
Is it where you want it to be?
No, but it's not like mission critical like it had been the last couple of years going into the season. Like they have much bigger issues as far as, in my opinion anyway, they're going to have to take a look at their offensive line because you lose 3 key pieces of that. The secondary is just a mess right now, and tight end is top of mind to me anyway.
We had the quote at the combine again. Well, we like our guys.
You're going to get that every time, Chris.
Absolutely.
Up to the microphone.
Well, 2 of them you're not going to re-sign with Mo Ali and Kylan Granson. And we hope we need to see more out of Will Mallory because he hasn't played much.
No,
because
don't know what he is.
Whatever. So you like who you have, but boy, we would love to get somebody else in there to be the main guy.
But both of you make good points that the wide receiver position on the Colts is not as mission critical as it has been.
Right. It's still years. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's better. They're in a better place than they were maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago.
I agree. And you look at the roster needs, cornerback, tight end, big needs, very obviously. I've said this before here on this podcast that I think the Colts need more dynamic playmakers on the outside. A guy like a DK Metcalf.
And if they could get DK Metcalf,
it'd be incredible. Absolutely incredible.
No problem.
And I also have pointed to that in the past about how important that was in young quarterbacks' development, like Jalen Hurts' development, getting A.J. Brown. stupidly from the Tennessee Titans, and
Right,
you should
right.
send them a bouquet of flowers
Well,
every
Stephon
year
Diggs.
if you're a Colts
Send them
fan.
a Super Bowl
At
ring.
the on draft day, send them a bouquet of something, whatever. And even if you're just a Colts fan, if you're an Eagles fan, maybe probably too. Like every day at the draft, because in honor of trading AJ Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles. But you look before that, and it was Stephon Diggs to the Bills, and how important he was for Josh Allen's development. Like that one dynamic, incredible playmaker that is at level A1, 1A tier. Like that Michael Pittman is trying to get there. And he's said in the past, like where he needs to improve to get to there. I like Pittman a lot. He's not there. He's not where A.J. Brown is. He's not where Stephon Diggs was when he was traded to the Bills.
Lamb, I mean, we name all these
CeeDee
guys.
Lamb going to Dallas to continue Dak Prescott's development.
Right.
Like all those guys. You're completely right. And so that's why I keep bringing up receivers like this. And I keep thinking it's important while realizing at the same time, both of what you guys said was true.
Well, and both all things can be right. Like the receiver room's in a better place.
Yes.
That doesn't mean it can't get better.
Correct.
And that's where like if you brought in DK Metcalf, like there you go.
Yeah.
Boom. No question.
Well, I guess they could have looked into Deebo Samuels.
A fifth round pick, by the way.
Oh, I know.
Now,
for $17 million?
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
I was going to say, it's fifth round pick. You're like, man, we could have gotten it. But then there's the contract that goes along with making that
he's
trade.
Been injured the last few years.
Right.
So, and that's one thing. It was interesting. The Athletic put out one of their writers tried to sort out the quarterback. What's the best landing place for these quarterbacks? And he wrote that the best landing spot guy for the Colts was Sam Darnold. Okay, let's say you do that. Okay, he's going to cost you 40,
Probably
40, 45 million. And
35 at least.
Does that send? What does that do to your quarterback room if Richardson wins the position and you can get your backup guy making 40 million? And if you do 40 million, it's going to limit, no matter how much you can massaging of the cap you do, it's going to limit what you do.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not going to, the guys we haven't talked about, the cornerback Ward, that's 16, 17 million. DJ Reed's going to be 14 million or so. A safety is going to cost you 12 or 13 million. So if you go after Sam Darnold because you think he could really not only push Richardson but maybe be the guy because you just don't know, then it is there are consequences, and it's going to limit what you can do elsewhere on the free agent market. That's simply the economics of the NFL.
You are watching the Colts Blue Zone podcast on Fox 59 now. And Chap, since you bring up defensive backs, we can turn our attention to those guys on that side of the ball. And again, we're turning back to the Philadelphia Eagles because several players are coming out of Philadelphia that will be in demand in the secondary in this free agency pool. The Eagles have cut Darius Slay, a six-time Pro Bowler who's now 34 years old and has played in his career for the Lions and the Eagles. I'll say that Slay is not big play Slay, the same guy he was as an all-pro type caliber player for the Lions and earlier in his career with the Eagles. And the Eagles released him because they have some young guys in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean who have proven after 1 year that they are capable.
Showed some stuff, didn't they?
Exactly. They have some exciting whites there in Philadelphia, as is very famous. The memes that have come out with Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship. It's hilarious how much they have, like the whole team has embraced that moniker to me. I think it's really, really funny. But anyway, Slay is a veteran cornerback who could come to a place with young cornerbacks and push those young cornerbacks and show those young cornerbacks. Stephon Gilmore 2.0. And I think Gilmore is at a better level then, or even now, than Slay is right now. So, but he's still a big name, and he's a guy who's had success in the past, and a guy who immediately commands respect.
I saw something the Eagles might want to re-sign him, get out of the contract and re-sign him for a lesser number.
We'll see about that. We'll see what he wants to do in his career.
Right.
Does he want to competing for championships? Then stay in Philly right now. Yeah. But if he wants to get paid somewhere, maybe somewhere else is the option.
and he would be a short-term fix.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah.
But
1
that-
year,
but,
maybe 2.
well, you hate to go year to year, not year, but maybe 2 years at a time, which they've done with Justin Houston, with Yannick Ngakoue, with Stephon Gilmore was a 2-year deal that he begged
Yes.
out.
And they did the nice thing, and they traded him
out of the
after that
second year.
disaster of the season.
So you hate to do these 2-year thingies in free agency because in a year or two
You're
here
in the
you are
same
again.
place.
But at some point, I think you have to do that at certain positions. Again, they tried to do it at defensive end because they missed on draft picks. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. There's other options out there. Younger, Javarius Ward, he's 28.
Yep.
But again, he's going to. I look at Pro Football Focus, and sometimes people scoff at these numbers they throw out there, what they project. Boy, they're close when they project it, and they project him at $14.5 million a year. He started 46 games the last 3 years.
It's pretty good.
So it's pretty good.
Experience, yeah.
And then again, DJ Reed, same thing, 28. So there are options out there, and if the Colts and Chris Ballard is serious, then doggone it, by next Thursday, shouldn't they have a guy
I would think so.
or two
Yes.
signed?
Yes.
Because one thing he told us at the end of the season is they have to get to where they can close deals.
Yeah.
Because again, they made a strong. You don't want to defend the Colts because they don't need to be defended, but they have chased free agents. They have, but in a couple cases did not close the deal. Daniel Hunter being one of them. So, but they need to close the deal, which normally means more money.
Yep. You got to outspend
money,
the other people
more
trying to
guaranteed
get
money.
these guys on their team.
And that's where it's risky because I would say there's probably, I don't know what the odds are on the big free agents, whether it's you hit on 50, it's probably not 50-50. I bet it's less than that. And when you miss, there are consequences. But doggone, you got to swing.
Yep. And you know who I don't feel bad for? Chris Ballard, because he's making multiple $1 million a year to make these calls. You know,
Right.
and you do, I'm not implying that you
Right.
do either.
Right.
I'm saying that you can acknowledge the difficulty of their position and also realize that they're supposed to be in the top 1% of the 1% of people who make these decisions.
Right.
And they're supposed to make the right decisions.
Right.
So holding people to that standard, whether it's here with the Colts, whether it's in Philadelphia, whether it's in San Francisco, whether it's in Kansas City, doesn't matter where. You should be holding those people, if you are a fan of the team, to that high standard.
Right.
You say, well, that's tough. Maybe you give another $1 million or $2 million. Sometimes the owners aren't great to
I don't
spend
think
money.
the owner here is a problem.
No, I don't think so
on
either.
getting
No,
an
no,
extra
no,
million
no.
or two.
I wasn't.
That's your point.
Right.
It would be Chris Ballard saying, no, this is my limit. This is what we value this guy at.
Right.
Even when the owner says, hey, I'll give you another $2-3 million.
Right.
So they've got to close deals.
Yes, exactly. And that was the point I was making.
Right.
And I was trying to clarify the point.
Yes,
you were
I agree
making.
with you.
So yes, it's just got to be done. And that's the standard that has to be held up here in Indianapolis this year. That it needs to get done. James Bradbury, another cornerback, another Philadelphia Eagle that they're also releasing. He was a 31-year-old, had a torn Achilles during the preseason. It didn't play at all this year.
Let's not go there.
Right? Chap's already saying no.
Achilles, I'm out.
We did that with Eric Fisher, and it just let's not do that.
So Bradbury came back to Philadelphia because he was an Eagle for their first Super Bowl run. Then he went elsewhere. He came back last year. He was going to join again and kind of be a guy that was there in case Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean didn't work out so well. Fortunately, they did, and so they could platoon those guys with Slay and with some others there in the secondary. And anyway, Bradbury turned out not being missed too much,
right?
But nevertheless, did not have the best of times. I think it was with the Giants where he went for a couple years after Philadelphia, and so he came back to Philadelphia looking for kind of success in an old stomping ground where he had success before, and but yeah, I guess he gets a Super Bowl ring out of his return. Good for him for not playing a.
So he had another one with them.
I believe he was there for the first
run.
I believe he was. I might be getting my years mixed up. He might have been after that first one, but I think he was on the team for that first one. I could be mistaken. Anyway, So yeah, those are kind of the defensive backs. You mentioned Justin Reed, the chief safety as well. It's kind of another position, but still in the secondary. You look at
Right.
Reed.
Yeah, I realized that you meant DJ Reed now in your text message, and
Right.
I
I'm
wrote
sorry.
down Justin Reed on the rundown. So from the Chiefs, still a position of need, still a guy who is they didn't tag him,
Nope.
so he will be available if you need to bolster your safety ranks. You really can't do much better than Justin Reed.
Justin Reed, Javon Holland are kind of the two A and B for
Yeah.
safeties. It's not like last year we've talked about it before how saturated the market
Yeah.
was
Oh,
with
there were
safeties.
ton, and they didn't do anything. And
Right.
there were a ton of good ones out
Right.
there, and they didn't do anything.
But still, there's still tiers, and even if the market is saturated, and those guys will be guys
Right.
who will be high on teams' priority list if they want to go
and maybe the
veteran free
Chiefs
agency route.
also try to
Right.
re-sign him. You just don't know. Maybe there was something about the current deal that they wanted to get out of, and there you go.
All that.
Or well, he's a free agent, so it doesn't
Well,
matter.
Javon Holland, we mentioned, they project him at like almost $20 million a year for safety. But
Yikes.
Which I know, yikes. Yet in the new defense, that safety is
That's the most important position.
Remember the Jesse
Yep.
Bates and what he meant. So, and before we get to those guys, we're going to have to find out what the Colts do with their own guys, and it's really amazing to me. We've talked that to me their most important free agent guy to resign is probably Will Fries because he was playing at he's 26. And he's been playing at an not an all pro, but a Pro Bowl level with the broken leg. So we thought, well, maybe I can bring him back for 1 year, prove it. Pro Football Focus has him getting almost $14 million a year over a 3-year deal.
That would be a heck of a deal for him after
and he's
shattering his leg.
He's like 28th overall in all their free agents. And one site's got him, maybe the Athletic, as the top guard on the market.
Wow.
And the other one is Odangbo, which career season in 23 with 8 sacks, and it sort of slipped off with 3, but he had pressures and all this. And he's projected to get 16 or 17 million. And this is coming out of the combine. Yeah. And don't you just know that these agents are talking to the media and they're thinking, my guy's going to get some interest. So
make your own market.
It could very
grains
easily
of salt much needed in these reports.
Correct.
Yes.
So just be careful where you see this. But Odangbo I've mentioned this before, he is exactly the kind of guy that Chris Ballard would target if he's on another team.
Yep.
Danico Autry type of guy.
Yep.
To where he's been pretty good.
Inside,
he's
outside.
Young, he can go inside, outside. But this is also going to really test when Chris Ballard said, sometimes I value my own players too much, which led to last year funneling all that money to his own. So these are two really interesting, and I have to believe that if they're going to re-sign these two players, it's got to be done before Monday.
Yeah.
Before somebody else can call your guy on the phone and say, we like you, and we're looking at 18, 19 million a year. So if you don't re-sign them, it's kind of like what Jerry Jones has done. If you don't do it early, it's going to cost you late.
Right.
So, and these are two really interesting because Fries is coming off the broken leg, and Odangbo,
he's flashed, but he's not been consistent.
And if you miss on either one of them and you sign them, then it's going to cost you. And if you don't sign Odangbo and he goes somewhere and turns into better than a Jerry Hughes, which was I would never say they should have not traded Jerry Hughes. That didn't work. This is different. This guy, and again, he's 26. He's 26 and he's 6'6", 280 something. And you would hate to give up on a young pass rusher, but it's going to really test his how he values his own as opposed to we've got to go after other people's free agents.
And that's got to really test your evaluation skills as a general manager. You realize a mistake you have made. You value your own guys too much.
Right.
But now, looking forward, you want to take steps to correct that mistake, but you still want to value your guys properly.
He talked about Odang. I asked him about Dio at the combine. He said, He's becoming everything we thought he would become.
Yep.
And
That's a heck of a soundbite.
And the future's in front of him. I mean, it wasn't the future, but everything's in front of him. That tells you that he's not ready or willing.
He's not ready to give up on that yet.
And that's fine. That's fine. But it's going to come at a cost.
Yeah, and the ball is totally in Odengbo and his agents.
Sure. But if the Colts come to Odengbo with those kind of numbers, doesn't he stay?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know.
Depends on, I think, how his meetings with Lou Anarumo have gone. How he's met with him and what Lou has said to him about which I think I have no reason to think that they would be bad. But I just wanted to say
the problem is you're not supposed to have contact with players.
Fair.
Now,
you
can have a
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
You can have a contact at three-way where it's you and the agent, and Odengbo's just sort of listening, I guess,
funneling information from one side to the other,
nodding and all this. So that stuff happens. But I think this is one of the more interesting situations that Chris Ballard is going to face, because everything he told us at the combine is, man, I like this guy. And again, his first season was almost a red shirt because of the Achilles. Yep. It really was. And you don't want to now. If you re-sign him and you give him $18 million a year, he better give you 12, 13 sacks a year. He just better, and pressures. But boy, you don't want to see him go elsewhere and just become a star.
Exactly. That would be painful, no doubt about it.
At that position, you talked about having to focus on getting better players on the edge, offense and defense. This is the type of player you want.
Yep, no doubt. Like you said, he's the kind of guy that would be targeted if he wasn't on your team necessarily. We'll step into mock draft land, and I want to start with the guy that I brought up last week here, Chap, who you weren't here for on the podcast, but Matt and I were talking, and I singled out South Carolina safety, Nick Emanwari.
I don't want him for two reasons. I'd be calling him Nick all the time.
Nick. Hey, Nick.
And then I've got to spell the name.
Yep.
And I look at it as I'm doing my copy. I think that's not right. There's not enough M's or whatever.
No, that's right. Nick Emanwari went to the combine and dominated, ladies and gentlemen.
That vertical jump, man.
Just a monster of a man. 6'3", 220 pounds, hybrid box type safety, who also had a 43-inch vertical jump and also ran a 4.38 40.
So his RAS is off the charts.
I think he was a 10. And the funny thing was, like, the guy who does RAS.
Then he's a Colt.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
First round. The guy who does RAS, he's a great follow on Twitter, @MathBob, I believe is his Twitter handle. But he said, like, the evaluation is done, like, 10 out of 10 is the most athletic at that position ever. He said, basically, this guy was a 10 out of 10 at this safety, would have been a 10 out of 10 at free safety, would have been like a 9.98 at corner, would have been like a 9-something at linebacker, like, because usually there are different metrics for these different positions and different things that are valued. But with his size, like 6'3", 220,
size and speed,
he would have still like hung up there, held up with linebackers who are supposed to be a little bit bigger. And so his numbers wouldn't have dropped so dramatically that like a 6 foot, 205 pound safety, their numbers would have dropped because he just would have been too small. It just shows how ridiculously athletic and ridiculously big this guy is. Like, everything screams Chris Ballard pick to Nick Emanwari, safety out of South Carolina. I'm just throwing it out there right now. I'm not saying it's going to happen because, like we've said before, Colts have some other needs as well.
Safeties
but safety
don't normally go high.
No, they don't. No, they do not.
I've got the list at home, and there's not a lot of them.
But if you look at any of the post-combine risers and fallers, Nick Emanwari, up all
to the moon.
All of them mentioned that because of the speed, the size of the guy, and then the speed that he's able to do, and then the 43-inch vertical jump.
Just stupid.
Insane.
Just stupid.
And the value that the safety has in this defense.
Right, exactly.
Jesse Bates was pretty good for Luke.
Jesse Bates is always in. Whenever I think about the Colts and what they're going to do in this offseason, that Jesse Bates, Lou Anarumo stuff is always in the back of my mind. They need somebody that's kind of the quarterback of that defense, and the safety spot is what provides that.
I had lunch yesterday with Rick Venturi, just a vast knowledge of things, and we were talking mock drafts, and a couple of them, you got it listed here, have them taken a guard, Tyler Booker
out of Alabama.
I'm sorry,
yes,
or some Mambo, Armand Mambo, I think, from
Okay, I don't know who you're talking about, but
another
I,
guard.
but I
Another,
believe
another,
you.
There was
Another
another
guard.
guard in there. I can't
another
remember his
top
name.
15 guard.
Yeah.
And the comments were they could have the best guard tandem in the NFL.
Well, good for them.
Good job,
I
guys.
thought that's where we are with where there's if this were the Eagles and you were trying to do that, okay, fine. But this team, it needs playmakers, and whether that's Nick E. or or one of the quarters, Jedi Barron, the kid from Texas.
Yep.
See, I butcher names, and I apologize.
That's okay.
But that's why most mock drafts have either Tyler Warren,
Yep.
who I don't think he's going to be there 14.
Yeah, neither do
I
I.
just
the
don't.
more I see other mock drafts, he just keeps going earlier. Like
And
to
then
the
the
Jets
question
or something.
is Colston Loveland, do you value him enough to be your so-called consolation prize at 14, although you can probably get him at 20.
Do you try to trade back?
I-
Chris
I-
Ballard,
Yeah.
licking his chops.
Yep.
Trade back, get some more
I
picks.
think they're in a position this year to where more picks doesn't cut it.
Mm-hmm.
I really, I just, because you got to win. You got to, if not got to win, man, you got to show that you got to show that you're right there to win. That's why I would almost force the tight end, depending on what they do in free agency. I don't think they can get a free agent tight end.
There's not a great
to move the needle,
a great catch-all solution
No.
to tight end that's available.
So I would even if I have Tyler Booker ranked number 10 and I've got Warren ranked 15, which I don't think that's the case. I would take the tight end because doggone you, with all the stuff, all of the importance on Richardson's growth at stake, give him every chance. Give him a tight end that can do something over the middle of the field. Now, I'd say that the floor should be give me Jack Doyle, and you want more. And I'm not, dissing Jack Doyle at all. I mean, they miss.
We would never on this podcast.
No.
Sacrilege.
They miss that type of tight end. So I would err on the side of almost forcing a pick at 14. Whether Warren would not be forcing the pick, but the more you think and you see, to get Tyler Warren, I just think it's going to require moving up to get him.
Yeah. And will they do something like that? Would they move assets? Chris Ballard says it's a different off season. We're going to take a different approach this year. But you just wonder when it comes to draft day, and it's time to make that decision. Are you really going to take that philosophy or not? I just don't know.
If he trades up in the first round, that would be a significant shift in his
right. Now we know they tried
philosophy.
to do that this past draft.
Yes.
But we don't know, and they weren't able to get there.
So the Giants at 5?
I think they were all the way up at 5, yes.
So Malik, they wanted Malik Neighbors.
They wanted Neighbors.
They wanted
from all indications, they wanted Neighbors.
Right. Now, whether they tried to move up a little bit to get Bowers, I really don't know.
Right.
And I've had people tell me that had Bowers been there at 15, they would have taken him over Latu.
Okay.
Now, I from positional value, you should have to take the pass rusher. If you've got your pick of the lot,
right?
And I value an edge pass rusher. I value Dwight Freeney over Dallas Clark, and that's not
both great players, but in different ways.
And that's
reasons.
not because Freeney's in the Hall of Fame. It's because he's a pass rusher, and he can make 3 plays in a game.
Yep.
And win you a game.
Yeah, he can snooze for 3 quarters, but as long as he makes those plays in the fourth quarter.
I'm not saying Freeney did because I like Dwight and he'd punch me.
We don't want that.
But so we talked about, I don't see the numbers here, but another breaking news, the Raiders just made Max Crosby the highest paid non-quarterback in the league.
Whoa, Max.
And we know what those numbers are huge.
Yeah.
3-year, $106 million, 91 million guaranteed. That's monster.
Wow.
And
That's
of course,
massive.
he is a monster. He's just a freak when it comes. But that's just, it reinforces what we've said: the value of power and pop off the edge, whether it's a pass rusher, even if it's a left tackle. I would put that in there as difference makers, but corner and defensive end and receiver. So
I should say we mentioned there were no great tight end free agents for the Colts. But if they did want to work a trade for the Raiders, Michael Mayer is probably available from the Raiders.
He had a modest. I looked at his numbers; they weren't great. Well, but because your other guy,
Look at the other guy. Yeah.
Look at the other guy and look who's throwing to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So both of those things. Can't leave this podcast without mentioning the retirement of Jimmy Johnson from the Fox Sports booth. He'd been with the network since 1994. Did take a break during that time to become the coach and GM of the Miami Dolphins, however, but retired from the Cowboys. Came back briefly, had a second go around in the NFL, and then called it quits for real. Headed back to the network and was a pivotal part of the NFL on Fox pregame show for the better part of 3 decades now. I have to count them in my head because I'm like 1995. That was like 6 years ago, right?
Feels like
no,
it sometimes.
No, it was not.
It was, but it's definitely not.
Exactly. But Jimmy had success at the college level, winning national championship. Then to the NFL level, won a Super Bowl. There are not many coaches that can say they have done that. Do you know the coaches that have won at the college and the pro level? There's him, actually Barry Switzer.
I was going to say another one was Cowboys.
Exactly. Took over, and I think there's like 1 or 2 more because this is a stat that has been brought up, like a trivia thing that we've brought up. I'm going to look it up real quick, but Chap, as I'm looking this up, just your thoughts on the retirement of Jimmy Johnson and the voice that he was for many years for Fox Sports.
Not many guys make the transition as well as he did. Not like John Madden. I mean, Madden was different.
He's in a class in and of himself.
Right. He was in the booth, and he just sort of exemplified what you want in that guy. But Jimmy Johnson, I personally think Fox, I think all these guys have too many people on the stage.
Yeah,
too many voices.
It's a little crowded. It always reminds me. There's a scene in The Naked Gun where they're going through the booth, the 1989 movie, and it's just like person after. There's like 9 people in the booth.
Right.
You know, and the problem is, it has gotten there. It has gotten to that point now.
Right. But a Hall of Famer. I was one of those not in favor of him going in because he went in the same year that Bill Cowher went in. And they did the announcement. They told him on the show.
On the show, they did.
Right.
He was very emotional on the show.
But since I was in the Hall of Fame, I thought they leapfrogged Don Coryell when I thought Don Coryell should have gone in first, but that's neither here nor there. But great for him. A great personality. It's funny. I saw a great thank you from Jerry Jones that he put out there, and they did not part on good terms.
They did not.
If I'm not mistaken, it was from an owners meeting where somebody was talking, and they were talking about how Jimmy, and at a bar, and finally Jerry said, basically I could get anybody to come in here and coach this team, and they got rid of him and went to Barry Switzer. So, but. Great player, or great person, great personality, and I hope doesn't he live like in the Keys?
I believe so.
I believe so.
He like spends a lot of time on his boat. And all
Good for him.
Good for him.
I say one of the photos that we selected from this role of Jimmy Johnson was him throwing the first pitch at a Marlins game.
Nice. Okay,
that's what you want. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I just thought it was out of context. There's Jimmy Johnson, the great football coach, throwing a baseball.
Nice. But there's one more coach who has won a Super Bowl and a national championship, and that is Pete Carroll. That's it. Those 3 who won at USC and then with the Seahawks. So Jimmy Johnson was the first coach.
When you're one of 3 in anything.
Yep.
Some things you don't want to be one.
It depends on the thing, chap.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I look back and I remember how he built the Cowboys and the Herschel Walker trade, and how he got basically how he swindled the Vikings. It was to make that trade, and it was basically they get Herschel Walker, the Vikings do, and the Cowboys would get all these players. But then he had inserted in the trade basically, if this player doesn't make the roster, then we get a 2nd round pick. If this player doesn't make the roster, then we get a 3rd round pick. So that's how the trade went through. And after the trade went through, Jimmy Johnson called he basically was on the phone with them, was like, I'm not keeping any of these guys. We need picks. Like we need to retool this team. And so they weren't happy, the Vikings, because they took all these picks from them.
Without
the
reading
Cowboys
the contract,
did.
without reading the deal.
Exactly, or not thinking that they're thinking that there's no way this guy's
These
not
are
going to make the
solid
roster.
players.
Yeah,
There's no way they're
the
going to.
Cowboys have a terrible roster. He's going to make the team. Nope, they cut them all so that they didn't make the team. And then the Cowboys got all these draft picks as compensation in that Herschel Walker deal and was able to draft super important players to their stretch of winning
You
Super
might
Bowls.
remember too better than I do, but they benefited from like Steve Walsh. Did they draft Steve Walsh and then they kept him for a year and then they traded him for picks. So they were really good at turning players into, and again, the people they got, like you said, the Russell Marylands and people like that were players for a long time.
Yeah, really, really good players. And you can read Mike Chappell's work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Follow us all on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone individually. Matt Adams is at Statomati. Mike Chappell is at mchappell51. I'm Dave Griffith at DaveG_sports. And we appreciate you listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast.